the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. It seems like I do this a lot these days, but I think it comes with the territory. The I told you so's. I think it's astonishing that you watch Fox News now. Never forget Fox News, how they behaved when they thought Trump was done and down and out, and they put him in exile, and the way they pivoted to Ron DeSantis and more conventional Republican types. I got a good taste of this more than a decade ago. The Orthodox thought they were going to put the genie back in the bottle and go back to the George Bush days. I remember having discussions with people, higher ups at Clear Channel Radio, because I was a frequent guest at the time. This is over a decade ago. And the discussion was, you're talking about these school levies and the increased costs of labor at public schools. And it was a sensational kind of, it was a sensational topic at the time, because if you came out against it, you were in the extreme minority, and they didn't see any harm in it. I remember the Cincinnati Enquirer came out to my house. I knew everybody on a first name basis back then. They came out to my house doing kind of an expose. I did a thing with bullwhips, which they thought was crazy, because how are you going to do a credible political campaign and have bullwhips attached to it and cracking targets out of people's mouths? I mean, how is that going to work? Well, I think I know a little bit about something in the human race that a lot don't know, because I study it in ways that most people don't. And I have a relationship with the totality of human endeavor, and I make my decisions based on that understanding. So I had a pretty good idea where it was all going to go, even when all the executives at Clear Channel were like, you got to stop getting on the radio and talking about teacher unions being attached to socialism and communism. Communism is a bad word, and you're saying that all these unions are communist. Well, fast forward a little bit. I was on the radio all the time. Many millions of people were hearing my broadcasts on weekday shows 9 to 12, and then weekends 9 a.m. to noon on the Darryl Parks show. So I had a pretty good following, and a lot of political people were listening to everything I said. And based on that, there was Senate Bill 5 came out, and in it was a rebuke on public sector unions. John Kasich got affiliated with it. John Kasich these days, he's a big time progressive. He's an anti-Trumper. Apparently he's got his own podcast. I just heard about it the other day because he served himself into some news stories about DeWine. DeWine's on his way out and showing all his progressive roots, and everybody's showing various degrees of Democrat politics, which I had been worrying about for a very long time, and including going back to 2012. So based on the strength of that argument, there was a hard push to get rid of public sector unions. Public unions should not be affiliated with public money, taxpayer money, for collective bargaining. And Kasich and everybody got on board with that, but they went, like a lot of people do when they listen and take advice, they don't understand the subtleties of human nature. And the Overton window was being ripped too far, too fast for most people, because an awful lot of people in society, they may have strong feelings about it. They may go out and fire off fireworks on the 4th of July and put a "Don't Tread on Me" flag on their truck on Sundays on the way to a sports game, or the Reds or the Bengals if you're in Cincinnati. They may consider themselves patriots, but they don't really have the guts to do it in day-to-day, moment-to-moment life. So I warned everybody that all the unions, all labor unions, were communist in nature. They were created out of a communist movement that was immigrated into the United States for all kinds of detrimental purposes. And, there's no way to put that in the bottle and put a cap on it. It's the truth. It's the truth. Well, I was told by a lot of people, you're making a lot of people upset when you say that, because a lot of people made money off that chaos. And when the 2012 election didn't go very well, and the public sector union thing blew up in Kasich's face, I got further pushed off. A lot of people thought that I was, as far as an advisor or someone who could be listened to and trusted, that I was on my way out, and new forces would take over and add more to it. And I've seen this cycle literally many hundreds of times over my life, where everybody thinks, oh wow, you're the world fell apart around you and you're done. Well, what happens to what other people do, or what other people say, and what other people make decisions on, you decide whether or not they define you or not. And I'm having a little bit of fun going back and saying, hey, see, I was right, because all those Fox News types and the same people, because I interacted with a lot of people at Fox News during those days, the 2012 period, because I was on Clear Channel a lot. And they pulled that rug out from underneath me, because they simply, the corporate structure of that, they wanted to be less political because it was hurting them. They wanted to be more sports and talk about cooking hot dogs on the grill. That's cool. Talk about labor unions coming into the United States to undermine it. And you see it in the public sector unions. Not so cool, because a lot of people didn't want to deal with that. Well, look around. And like I said, when Trump was going, the populist movement from the conservatives was MAGA. The populist movement from the Democrats was Bernie Sanders. And they tried to put a glossy finish on it and try to keep everybody behind the Chuck Schumers. And they promoted Ocasio-Cortez as a representative of that radical left-wing faction. But as we're seeing, the populism of the left are radical, crazy Democrats, socialist, Marxist, communist types. And that's Mamdani starting and opening the door. I mean, the door was already opened by Bernie Sanders. But Mamdani in New York showed what was possible. Of course, that kind of representation is shown in Amy Acton in Ohio. But there's several others who are getting, who are on the ballot and are running and looking polling-wise favorable in the upcoming November elections, 2026. And I think a lot of people are like, is this who we are? Because I guess they thought all this is going to go back into a bottle, even though 2012, I was warning everybody, you can take me off the air, you can rechange, you can make sure that, you're not going to invite me on any of your shows to talk about it, because you hope that the narrative, the Tea Party narrative, could be put back in a bottle and controlled. And of course, when MAGA came out, it came out like I said it would. It was going to be a natural evolution of questioning the structure of things and ignoring or chastising or getting rid of voices like mine. Obviously, they didn't get rid of my voice. Here it is, 2026, and everything I said was going to happen is happening. 13 some years ago, I called all this and said all this, and nobody wanted to hear it. And now they're paying for it. And that's in my life, with people I interact with, that tends to be the norm, where, I warn things way in advance, and people don't listen. They think they know better, and they go off and do their own little thing anyway. And I warn them, when their lives fall apart, it doesn't mean, I'm not going to go out there and jump off a bridge. I just giggle at it and say, well, I told you so. And I've told a lot of people so over a long period of time. And this socialist Marxist wave is an infusion, all of which I've been talking about for many years. Remember, right after Trump got thrown into exile, remember what I did? I went on this little broadcast and I read to everybody the planks of the Communist Manifesto from Cleon Skousen. And Matt Clark and I on a radio show in Ann Arbor, Michigan, during I think it was before Trump. I want to say it was 2013, 2014, around the time that I had all this trouble on Clear Channel. I didn't care about the Clear Channel thing. I mean, they were offering me to do a show on the AM station up in Ann Arbor. They were going to give me a whole weekend, talk about whatever I wanted. In fact, they were asking me very enthusiastically to do so, and I didn't do it because I wanted more freedom. I didn't want anything to do with corporate radio, even though this was a privately owned radio station. We all know what's happening to all private ownership in the United States. It's all getting gobbled up by all these conglomerates. And behind that is a Marxist communist push, one that's been out there for a very long time, and it's part of a plot that was hatched many years ago. And when I read the Cleon Skousen book, and guess Matt Clark and I did that on his radio show, on the one I just mentioned, up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And a lot of people had never even heard of this book, but yet the communist planks were clear. The Naked Communist is the book, and it's a plot. It really is what the left is. There is no making friends with those people. You know, I've warned everybody. I've shown my own inclinations. I can sit in a room with people who very much disagree with me, and I'll find a way to get them laughing and talking and breaking the ice. I think, communicate with anybody over anything. That doesn't mean that we're all going to be friends. That doesn't mean just because you're polite and business friendly with people that you're a sellout. I go for longevity on everything. I'm always playing the I told you so's. I will more than happy let people run themselves into a buzzsaw. And then I'll tell them a decade from now, I told you so. If you don't listen, and my reputation is the kind that people should listen, they'll profit a lot if they do. But when it comes to this whole communist thing, I was watching the Fox News group the other day, and they were just bewildered. I mean, that's Jesse Waters, and it was Laura Ingraham, and even Greg Gutfeld on his comedy show, The Five, on at 5 o'clock. None of them. Brett Baer, even. Brett Baer is a pretty much a normie. Not an outside the box thinker by any means. He's a normie. Most people are normal. That's why we call them normies. But even the normies are starting to feel it these days. They're looking around at their structure of their lives, their corporate cultures, and I've warned them. It's Marxist platitudes laid out in the Naked Communist book by Cleon Skousen. It was set up in the 50s and 60s, the 30s even. Bring communism in the United States, and now you're seeing the effects of it. We've been teaching it in our public schools for decades now, and I've warned against that. I've warned against teaching communism in schools, socialism, and public sector unions, funding them with taxpayer money, outright attack on property, private property, penalizing ownership of private property. That's what all these property taxes are all about. And then using that money, that confiscated wealth, to fund essentially Marxist endeavors, which is the public sector unions, especially in teachers' unions. And then they go and teach your kids while you're dropping off for free babysitting all these socialist, communist attitudes towards things. And it wasn't a very well-kept secret, but I would say it. I'd say it on the air, and people were like, oh, you can't talk like that and be on corporate radio. So I've just dropped doing corporate radio appearances because no one wanted to hear it. And I got tired of everybody's sending me little text messages and emails telling me why you went overboard on your discussion today on the radio. It's the truth. Well, we're here to entertain, not necessarily tell the truth. It's essentially the story. So here we are, and everybody's got caught. I think two terms of Trump, and the direction the voters had if there was an election fraud to keep Democrats and Rhino Republicans in power. If given their own predilections, people will vote for Trump, or they'll vote for the Marxists and the communists, the populist movements on both ends of the political spectrum. And controlling that narrative was always going to be dicey, and that's what's been going on for many, many years. And that's why things got out of control. And now all the people have bought that corporate line, hook, line, and sinker, and I mean corporate media. Everybody that adhered to it so they can get a decent job, pay decent money, but they ignored the evidence, is finding out now, is this who we are? Yeah, that's who we are. You spend 4 decades since the 70s, the creation of the Department of Education. You spend that long with radical teachers who are teaching Marxist ideas to classrooms through collective bargaining agreements, confiscated off property taxes. Horrible, horrible things to do. And you put all those elements together, what do you get? You get a bunch of kids that grow up and are radicalized. And now you're seeing them vote for outright communists. You're seeing it in New York and all over New England and Portland and all kinds of places. And they've seen, and it's worked for them to a large degree, and the playbook is now out in the open. And they think they can win everywhere. And they're trying it with Amy Acton in Ohio. And we'll get into that more. It's the anti-Vivek Ramaswamy, he's rich, hate him because he's rich mantra, and it's a communist push. This is the proletariat of our movement in the United States, a populist movement that has learned from Trump. Trump, conservative, capitalism, make all the money you can and enjoy it. And if you got it, flaunt it, it's okay. Pro-capitalist, don't apologize. To, I don't want to get up out of bed in the morning, I want to smoke dope, and I want everybody to pay me to exist. And I want to use the power of government, so I'm going to vote for bigger and bigger government to confiscate wealth from people who go out and work hard to make it so I can have it. And that's essentially what had happened. And Kasich didn't know how to deal with that in Ohio in 2012, as a lot of politicians did not. And they were like, that mean Rich Hoffman, we're going to blame him. We're going to separate ourselves from him. We won't invite him to the parties anymore. And we can put this George Bush thing back in the bottle and play nice and be controlled opposition. Well, it didn't work out, did it? And even when you play nice with them, they still come out to cut your head off. And that's what they do. And I warned you years ago. You didn't listen. You thought that by pushing me aside, and, you know, I do a lot of things in life. You know, being pushed aside is a decision. You can only be pushed aside if you give people that power over you. And that happens through teamwork and when someone decides they're going to pick a new leader, through consensus. You know, these are all little Marxist ideas that have come up. You know, and I live my life in a way where I don't let people have that kind of power over me. So I can giggle at it 13, 14 years later and say, guys, I told you so. You put me out there to be the fall guy. I never would forget it. I told you that at the time. And now you're looking around, you see all these communists coming into our government, and they're being elected by communists trained in our public schools, and you're wondering what's going on. I told you. I told you years ago, and you're, oh, that's so conspiracy, and that's why when I talk about this politics of heaven stuff and the conspiracy of aliens interacting with humans, 20 years from now, there's a lot of people that are going to owe me a lot of apologies. They think it's crazy because they've been trained to be a normie. Just like people thought it was crazy to talk about communism in our labor unions. Communism being taught in our schools. That's not happening. Yeah, it happened extensively, and you have the kids that are out there voting for it now. And as we celebrate the 4th of July, people go out and fire off their firecrackers and fireworks, and and rally to patriotism, and everyone's excited about that the U.S. soccer team played a little bit for people to rally behind and maybe get interested a little bit in soccer. I always say soccer is a socialist game from the European Union mindset. It's a socialist. Football, American football, is a capitalist game. Soccer is a socialist game. They penalize the forwards for being behind the fullbacks. So there's a whole lot wrong there. And it's a socialist game, not a pro-capitalist game. That's why a score of 0-0 is not uncommon. It happens a lot. If a team scores 1 or 2 points, we consider that a major blowout in soccer. But there's lots of little elements of socialism, Marxism that's ended up in our culture, and it's embarrassing. I told everybody it was happening, it was coming, why it was happening in front of them, and of course they said, nah, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to listen to the conventional normies because they're the ones that pay the bills. Because we're trying to sell ad revenue to them, and you're talking about stuff that's part of the 1% class. We're going after the 99%. Normal people who get out of bed every day, pay their taxes, work a job, buy our products that we sell to advertisers. And you telling everybody that they're communists and Marxists isn't going to get us anywhere selling advertising. So we don't want you on the air anymore, okay? So go away. Hey, I'll go do my own thing. That's okay. If that didn't change, I'll do what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do. But can't say I didn't tell you, and I'm having a little bit of fun these days telling everybody I told you so, which tends to be always the case. I can't think of any time in my life where I've looked back on something I really went on a limb on and was wrong. Whether it's business or politics, it always comes back around. And you either listen and profit from listening to me, or you'll suffer the consequences. And I'm not going to take responsibility for the Marxist movement that's happening, because I warned everybody about it and told you how to stop it 13 years ago, 2012, and nobody had the guts to do it then. So you're dealing with it now. Enjoy, and I'm going to continue giggling about it because, I do enjoy telling people I told you so. It may not make me that popular because people don't want to hear it, but I like to hear it. And my life's about my needs, and I have a need to tell people I told you so, because they shouldn't have listened to begin with. When I offer to help somebody, I usually do it out of the kindness of my heart, not for any personal profit, whether it's family matters, whether it's financial matters, whether it's business, politics. What I say, I give away usually for free, because I spend a lot of time studying these topics. And I want to help people for all the sincere reasons to help people, but people don't want to be helped. They want scapegoats. They want to play the blame game, and they play the game of the normies to their own detriment. And then they wake up one day and they're like, "Hey, how did all these communists get in office? Why do we have all these Marxist policies in corporate America? What happened?" Tried to tell you people, and you laughed at it and you thought it was crazy, and it didn't turn out to be so crazy. And 20 years from now, we're going to have the same talks about all the UAPs and the alien species and all the stuff that's really difficult to talk about in public. And a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, how did he know that stuff 20 years ago?" Same reason I told you about communism. And it's not like it's new information. The Naked Communist was written in the late 50s. We knew the Red Decade in the 30s, what the New Deal was all about with FDR, Kennedy, the 60s, post-World War II. We knew all of it. The world was all going. And it was all about seeping in communism under the door, which clearly happened, and now we're dealing with it. So don't act so surprised. You were warned. I warned you, and you didn't listen. And now you're going to have to choke on it. I take no responsibility for the stupidity of others. I reserve the right to withdraw, which I often do when people don't listen to me. I don't chase him down and try to shake him. Hey, you've got to listen. I'm trying to save you. I just say, hey, if you want to run yourself into the buzzsaw, have at it. I'm not gonna go out of my way. I'll take the effort to explain it to you, and you either listen or you don't. And if you don't listen, then that's on you. And I'm having a lot of fun telling people I told you so. I did tell you so. It's where all the communists are there now, and everybody who ridiculed when I said it, you've got egg on your face, and you're learning hard lessons too late in life. But tough toodles. Choke on it. Anyways, Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day, and see you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon.
Coming soon. The politics of heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.